Well, once again, thank you everyone for joining us this evening. And we are embarking on discussing generosity. And Dimitri will be making the major presentation on generosity. And Dimitri, if you can share the slides. Owen will go through the first couple of slides as we usually do with regard to what is stewardship, the meaning of stewardship, the definition and the like. And so, and then we'll go from there.
Myra, sorry. Okay. Hold on a second.
Okay.
I did not forget to open the presentation. So I apologize for that. I will try to open it as soon as possible. Forgive me. Let's see here. Okay, here is that. I believe that's the right one. Hope. Okay, and now I need to share my screen, right?
Correct.
Hold on a second, let me make those. And is there a screen? I'm sorry, guys. Myra, you don't happen to have this thing open, do you?
I was having difficulty earlier today. I can try. Yeah, hopefully.
I'm very sorry.
No, that's
If Myra's Gmail shows up, please ignore it.
Now that you say that.
That's what was happening
Okay.
when we were practicing this morning.
It has to do with also not being able.
All
Oh
right.
my
Aha,
goodness.
there you go.
Myra, you saved the date.
Okay, so actually we need to go, I
You saved the
think,
meeting.
back, right?
Much appreciated.
All right.
Okay.
All right.
All right. There is today's agenda. After we review the definition of stewardship, Dimitri will, as Myra said, lead us into a deeper dive into generosity after we have already completed the ownership and engagement pieces of our stewardship plan. Then we'll go into breakout sessions as we usually do and discuss some of the possible issues surrounding generosity, ways of implementing it, etc., within the parish, and trying to start to come up with some goals that are achievable within our parishes. The definition of stewardship is, as we review at each of our sessions, stewardship is our grateful and loving response to God's love, grace, and gifts to us. It is our personal commitment to God and His church to ensure its vitality and continuous growth by joyfully and sacrificially offering of our talents, time, and treasures that we have received from Him. Stewardship puts our faith in action and demonstrates our trust in God. As a reminder, this is a definition that was developed at the very beginning stages of working on a strategic plan for the Metropolis input from clergy and lay people. And it has been adopted by the Metropolis as the definition, our working definition of stewardship. So you might consider, when you have your stewardship committee meetings, making this a part of it right at the beginning. And when your stewardship committee gives a report to the parish council or parish assembly, consider putting this definition right at the top. And as you develop your campaign for stewardship for 2024, and I'm sure many of us are developing it, the blessed ones have completed it, consider building it around this definition. And with that, I turn it over to Dimitri.
Thank you, Owen, and good evening, everybody. Thank you for participating in our third section of our stewardship monthly meetings. The third section, after we already spoke about ownership and engagement, has to do with generosity. And this is the third leg of our stewardship program. So generosity, it is our response to God for what He has given us. As we have said many times in our stewardship program, everything we have is from God. And as a result, we show our gratitude back to God by being generous to others for Him. And as you are going to hear, it's not just money. It's how generous we are by volunteering our time, our talents, helping others. How we do this thing individually towards our own churches and parishes, and together, collectively, as a whole parish, how we are generous to others outside of our parish. So the next slide, you're going to see, try to say a few comments about, make a few comments, what is generosity? And what do we learn, especially looking at the Bible? I guess that's a good book for us to use. We can see that generosity is a virtue. In Matthew 10:8, Christ basically says to his apostles, freely you have received, freely you have to give back. And of course, that applies to us. We also see that generosity is a practice. In Matthew, again, we see that the command is to take care of the hungry and the thirsty, the homeless, and the ones who heard, for I was hungry and you fed me, I was thirsty and you gave me water. So it is a practice. Another thing about generosity is that it's something that is learned. We have as a standard, I guess, we look at Protestant churches or Western churches, that Lutherans and others, that they appear to be very generous with what they do. Well, I don't believe that Protestant babies are born with a generosity gene in them, but it's something that they learn when they grow up. And that is very important for us. And that is something we need to really try to do. So we must teach our kids, even ourselves, and we must encourage them to be generous in their lives. As we said before, generosity is more than money, right? It is about how we use our talents again, how we use our times for others, how we practice hospitality, how we talk to people, how we offer encouragement to others, how we connect with others. So it's, it's not just writing a check once a month, once a week, and a generous check perhaps, but it's a way of life, really. It is measured by our giving and our volunteering. And something that you should really remember, I think, is that generosity, it transforms, inspires, and is something that is contagious. So it uplifts people's lives, our own, and through us, others as well. So it's transformative, it's inspiring, it is contagious. So on the next slide, we're going to talk about what we see, what the Bible says about generosity, and it says a lot. Starting from Exodus, we see that Moses, when we read there that people were trying to build the tabernacle, and really the response was so great that people were giving so much that Moses told them to stop. He said, "It's enough. We don't need any more. Don't give more." Can you imagine someone in our church saying, "Well, you have given a lot. Stop. Don't give anymore. We don't need anymore." We see that generous people give in response to a cause. In Corinthians, we see how they help the Church of Jerusalem when it was in need. We also see that generous people give out of their substance. They can be large or small, the widow and the mite, right? I mean, nothing, just one mite. Also, we see that generous people give more than money. The Good Samaritan, yes, he gave the 2 denarii to the innkeeper, but he took the person that he found on the street, put him on his donkey or whatever, brought him there, took care of him himself. So time and talent. On the next slide, again, continuing some examples in the Bible, we see that generous people give when it doesn't even make sense, right? Joseph was extremely generous to his brothers, his father, and these people tried to kill him. Also, generous people give to others when they may be completely different than they are. Again, we see in Luke, the centurion that asked Christ to heal his servant and send his people to plead with Christ, "Come heal my servant." And these people go there and says, "Please do that for him because he's really a generous man. He loves our people. He has built a synagogue for us." Also, again, we see how generous people give to make the impossible possible. The young lad in John that gave 5 loaves and 2 fish, and Christ fed 5,000. Also, generous people give when others will not give. Philippians, again, supported Paul when other Christians will not help him. And finally, the transformation, how Zacchaeus from a collector of taxes became a giver by just seeing Christ. So the next slide, we're talking again about how generosity is more than money. At one point that we hammer over and over. Some people say, well, and this are a couple of slides that some of you may have seen. We presented those slides a couple of ladies ago. But we said then, people feel that maybe we don't have enough money to be truly generous. But generosity applies, going back to the widow with a mite, to everybody. You don't have, you give from what you have. You give from what you have. Generosity is transactional. It's not transactional, it's relational. You build relationships. Just cutting a check, it's one thing, but actually being active, like we said, practicing it and helping people, inviting people to your table to eat with them. It's more than just writing a check so we can buy something for them. And when you build relationship with people that you try to give to, then it's easier to give from what you don't have. And that's the point again, that it's good to give, don't give from abundance, but from what we don't really have. Not equal giving, but equal sacrifice, by Father Baracos. And we must give with joy and from the heart. That's what I believe Christ really asks us to do. As we can see in the next slide, God does not need our gifts. He doesn't really need anything. But we give because we believe that God is worthy of our gift, and it shows that God, the priority that God is in our lives. So we give to God, and through God to others. We finally, again, we give from the first and the finest, not from the leftovers that we have. And one more time, it's more than just writing a check. This is a good proverb, this Nigerian proverb, right? The heart does the giving, the fingers just only let go. On the next slide. Okay, so we say these things, and I guess maybe it's not a rocket science. So we come back to reality. So what do we do today in our churches? Typically, right? Some churches are do things differently, but overall, probably we do have a yearly minimum donation that yes, a lot of churches do. There are that say, well, they have no minimum, but for the most part, there's minimums. And we know that minimums become maximums. Trays, passing the trays, it's a very common thing, a time-honored tradition, perhaps. We have gazillions of fundraising activities, smokers, golf outings, festivals, bake sales, raffles, etc., etc., etc. Our priests constantly, again, most of the priests constantly ask for things. I don't know if that's really the role. I mean, priests should ask, but maybe we should concentrate on other things than trying to raise money to do things. And in addition to that, we have the various ministries that are asking for things, and maybe schools. For churches, we have schools. So I guess the question that everybody has to think about, and I'm sure people think about, is, well, how does that work for us? Is it something really we want to continue doing, or should we be doing something else? So as Christians, as we can see in the next slide, we hear, and the letter to the Corinthians is a good letter to read regarding generosity. Paul exhorts the church in Corinth, to prepare the generous gift in advance, which you had previously promised, so that it may be ready as a matter of generosity and not as a grudging obligation. So he exhorts the Corinthians to do that, to help others. And then also he says, let each one of us give as he purposes in his heart, not grudgingly or of necessity, for God loves a cheerful giver. And finally, we know that God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son. So love, generosity are together. A joyful, loving, gratitude-based support for our church and its mission. That's what we as Christians should be doing. Then, since we spoke about all these things, finally, what we need to do, we believe there are three things we should be doing. One is we need to educate. We need to educate all the parishioners, of course, our young people, but also our old people. What it's all about. Anything, from our leaders, clergy and lady, ministry heads, young adults, Sunday school students, all of us, we need to be taught the value of generosity and start, and then the next thing to do is to justify it. So we should have philanthropic initiatives that reflect the mission, vision, and values of the parish. We talked about this before. If we don't have those things in our parishes, I think probably will be a good idea to establish them. And then we need to promote an attitude of gratitude. We need to focus on income giving versus selling. We have to make people understand what we do individually and collectively. Yes, people say maybe that the left hand should not know what the right hand does, but boasting or having testimonials of people or showcasing generous acts of generosity in our parishes, I think is needed and it's necessary. And I think maybe when I said the left hand should, the right hand should not know what the left hand does, it's mostly for the individual not to become boastful about it. But I think it's our duty if we to show others so others can learn from our generosity. So we should not be afraid to get in front of our parishes and congregations and, with humility, say what we may be doing, again, as individuals, but also as parish. So this is what some thoughts and ideas perhaps I would, ask you to consider regarding generosity. And then on the next slide, we talk about, as we talked in previous sessions that we had on ownership and engagement, that we again ask all of us for 2024 now, since we're close to the end of 2023, we will ask each parish to create at least one goal or action to help advance the parish on the key element of generosity. Again, that, as we said before, these goals should be specific, should be measurable, should be achievable, and should be some, start and end have to it. Should be then brought to the leaders of our parish for their endorsement and approval and promotion. And then on the next slide, some example perhaps will be that we build consensus on our general assemblies for the parishes who don't have it, to put in our bylaws as a parish that moving forward, the next percentage of all of our fundraising gross proceeds should go to charity. That so demonstrates the generosity of our treasurer. Perhaps another goal will be to active engagement and participation in different ministries by an amount to demonstrate our generosity of talents. And then to help others, create a new service project for our community, that demonstrates generosity of our time. So that will be some of the examples. Another thing would be encourage young little, Sunday school kids. Maybe give them envelopes or little boxes that can be putting something inside, that every Sunday, maybe when they go up for communion, to put it, to give it to somebody there so the whole parish can see it, or after communion, or some way like that. That would be another something else we can do to promote and encourage generosity. And then I believe the next slide has to do with the breakout session. So I don't know, Owen, if you like to, or Myra, if you'd like to talk about that.
The breakout sessions, we would ask, as we've done in the past, that you share ideas, you talk about generosity, and there will be a facilitator in each one. And then you'll come back and share what it is that you discussed and the ideas that were expressed. So we can go into the breakout sessions. I will stop the recording